Hello, everybody. We are here for our second reading for the 100 Writing Days of Summer. In among you all, you can see some of our writers who've been writing every single day together. Some of us, we have sessions every day. You're not required to join every day. But we're going to share some works in progress that we've polished and cut out a little 7-minute segment to share with you. So it's so exciting to have you all here. Thanks for coming. Okay. Let me just see if I have anybody else in the waiting room waiting for me, but I do not. Okay, so we're going to start with, let me just go see. We're going to start with our friend Meredith. So Meredith says she's a lifelong learner who specializes in exploring her creative muse. She's been a working artist for over 40 years. And in this chapter, she's exploring writing, which is very exciting. I found Julia down a rabbit hole of social media. Lucky me, as I've landed with an amazing group of writing weirdos. That's us, you guys. So this group has given me a sense of community and a safe place to be authentic and encourage my writing. She's working on a memoir. And today we're going to hear snippets from a memoir. So let's give Meredith the floor. I am going to mute everybody. Meredith, you have to unmute yourself. And at the end of her reading, we'll unmute so you guys can clap, comment, and do whatever you want. Let me also say to you, please use the chat liberally. And also, tell people what you hear that stands out. Most of us know our weaknesses. Most of us know, oh God, there's a typo on page 42. But we throw out really beautiful things that are really moving things and we don't even notice them. So if you have a phrase that you just think is amazing or a metaphor, put it in the chat so that the right reader gets that input right away. Okay, so here we go. I'm muting everybody. And then Meredith, you're ready to unmute yourself because I don't have any choice but to mute you with the group. Mute all.
Here I am. Hi. I'm reading two short pieces and they are not polished. They are raw. And they're prompt motivated. The voice in me is shy. The words surface just below my belly button, swishing around in a vocabulary only I understand. At least that's my story. A story of long ago in a house built of love. I sat at the top of the pyramid looking down. My parents anchored the bottom corners. I had my own special box to play in. Silent, silent, silence. The patent leather shoes tap together. Dorothy listens to her wish. The wand of wonder circles over her head. I sit in a box now that is mine, my home, but still the words float. Is it time now? Is it time? She appears, maybe 6. The dress is pale blue, matching her quiet eyes. The dress floats up like an umbrella as she twirls. The smile is real. The joy is real. She curtsies and laughs. We had snow last week. Memories surfaced of that 6-year-old girl. Now she is covered in a red snowsuit. Pom-poms dangle from her neck. The fake fur around her hood is soft. She can feel the heat of her red cheeks from the New England temperature. A tiger roars from her laughter. The voice of joy is not hidden. I have no one to ask now. I want to ask, who was that little girl? Where did she go? I'm here now, the one that felt you alive inside of me as the uncontrollable laughter poured out from slipping in the snow. A child again, simple, keep it simple. You can ask me, we're in this together. I'm here too. That's one, this one's a little heavier. The prompt was, who's wearing the shoes in the family? The old cliche of who has the upper hand, another set of words where there is dominance and control. How out of control my life became 11 years ago. My friend, my true friend, was in that glass. White wine for so long, but then I started opening the freezer door at 1 PM and pull out the absolute vodka, adding to a glass chased with orange juice. I was living with my dad. It was the only brand he would drink until I was in charge of buying it for him. I would buy the cheap brand knowing he wouldn't be able to tell the difference. I let that friend coat my throat, tingle all the way down, do its thing, keeping me from feeling all the things I didn't want to feel. I was in my dad's home because I told myself it was the right thing to do. My mom had just passed, so much life I didn't want to feel. And my husband at the time had announced he needed to be loved. I was no longer providing that service. I was attached to my glass, my secret friend, the one that made my alcoholism blossom. It's strange to think of it that way, but if I hadn't gotten sober, I would not be experiencing the gift drinking brought. These two men in my life witnessed the effects. One chose to leave and the other chose denial. I mean, as my dad repeated, all he ever saw me drink was wine. I didn't drink the hard liquor, but here I was in his house, helping myself to his hard liquor. Screaming so loudly inside my body, I had to quiet the storm. How does one survive the loss of a parent and then in the same week have your husband tell you he wants out of the marriage? The only solution I saw was to hold my best friend in my hand and keep on disappearing. The house was big, 3 stories and lots of privacy, but there was no getting away from the fact that I had moved back in with a parent. Reliving my childhood became vivid. And not only was it his house, but it surrounded me with familiar things. Oriental rugs, a curated art collection, the overstuffed chair that was shredded in the arms and didn't need to be reupholstered. That was my Scottish heritage speaking. Everything had been stuffed to fit into the moving van that traveled 3,000 miles to this house on 416 First Street. I love those objects. Many are in my own home today, but I didn't love the dynamic that continued with my dad, a man who has given me many things, my creativity, my brown hair, now gray, my organizational skills, my kindness, and so many wonderful things. But he was a man of his time. Men provided for their wives and children. He was the man. That is the role model he had. His father was an entrepreneur, a man of the Depression who provided for his family. I finally rented a small house on the bluff overlooking Saratoga Passage. It wasn't in my budget. Who has a budget when you're living on the edge? I told myself when I moved in, I would stop drinking. My heart knew I was an alcoholic, but my real friends reassured me to give myself some slack. The situation warranted it. You just lost your mom and you're dealing with a divorce. So I kept drowning. A full glass of wine by the nightstand as I put myself to bed, or I'd allow just a small glass with breakfast. My body was running the show. Keep feeding me that liquid diet, it reminded me. I tried to quit for 3 months. They say if you do something for 3 months, there's enough time to change a habit. Who was I fooling? When the 3 months were up, I was on a plane headed for Mexico with girlfriends. I loved drinking when I traveled, and I didn't hesitate to order my first glass of wine. It didn't take long for me to put my armor back on again and step back into the fight. Done.
Wow, thank you. You had quite a few call outs in the chat, so don't fail to see that. I do think that was really moving and touching, and also thank you for your vulnerability. Anybody else have a comment for Meredith before we move on? Those were two really spectrum opposite too. It was lovely to see the range of, the sweet little childhood and the devastated adult.
Just thank you
then-
so much for sharing that, Meredith.
Mhm.
Very
Yeah, I feel
imaginary
as though
I
you
could see
really
what she was going
captured
through.
that idea of the alcohol being like your only friend.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
very good. Oh, okay. Meredith, anything else for you want to say? Or we'll move on? Okay, thank you for that. Now we have Susan Schatz, and she was raised in Brooklyn in the 1960s, and a grade school teacher helped her publish a poem in Red Book magazine. But she never really buckled down to take herself seriously. After college, she lived in Cambridge, then in New York City, and worked long hours in the entertainment industry. In LA, she began ghostwriting script coverage for top talent agents, and then international distribution and production companies before going freelance. Then she taught young people for about a decade. She found herself enrolled in the UCLA Extension's writing program for nonfiction. And right now she wants to finish her memoir and some personal essays and ready them for publication. And that is when she came to the 100 Writing Days of Summer. So let's hear from Susan. I am again going to mute everybody. Susan, you unmute yourself and begin when you're ready. You have to unmute yourself, Susan. We don't hear you.
I'm sorry, the house at Dunkirk. After the writers' strike in 1988, several friends boldly relocated to the Los Angeles area from New York City. The one not in the industry migrated to Big Bear Lake, high above the smog of Hollywood, to join her eccentric older sister. The other two were the only white writers on the original team of the newly created Arsenio Hall show. I had been working in the indie film circuit while taking courses at Hunter College. So far, I had PBS American Playhouse and Merchant Ivory Films under my belt, some casting assistant jobs, a desk position at the Screen Actors Guild working in theatrical claims, and a lowly reception position at a major talent agency. 2 years later, I sublet my apartment on the Upper East Side with every intention of returning to it when the economy improved. Perhaps I just needed reprieve from the aftermath of the AIDS epidemic. The loss of my close companion Andy from college days was palpable. He had been my main impetus for moving back to New York City in the first place. A dark shadow seemed to be lurking in all our usual spots. I had begun to isolate and felt a bit stuck in what felt like multiple lateral job positions with no upward mobility in sight. Rather than remain melancholy, the appeal of the other coast beckoned and seemed like a hell of a lot more fun. My maternal aunt paid me a visit from a few blocks away while I was packing up and sadly commented, "You're running. I hope you know what you're doing." My two guy friends still encouraged me to join them, and one of them even found a casting gig for me. Oddly enough, within several months of migrating to Los Angeles, everything went sideways. First, the freelance position fell apart. Then, my subtenant in New York City stopped paying rent. My cousin John, an attorney, convinced me to let the lease of my studio go to avoid the risk of unnecessary debt. The loss of my hard-earned footing in Manhattan was something I would regret for many years to come, and it piggybacked the major loss of my special friend. In the meantime, after hitting my 2-year mark in Los Angeles, I was in a new relationship with a talented California native. I made the impulsive decision to move in with Scott, a computer games programmer. Getting married had never been a high priority, but I did play the role of the homemaker since he was an excellent provider. I gave the relationship my best shot, and 8 years later, we hit a dead end and broke it off. I was pushing 40 and couldn't afford to keep our 2-bedroom apartment. He relocated to the Bay Area without me. I kept our circle of mutual friends. In my daydreams, I wanted to return to the East Coast and to the familiarity of my family and longtime friends. I imagined myself the female protagonist, Anne, in the final scene of Jacqueline Suzanne's The Valley of the Dolls. She is walking through the serene covered woods in New Hampshire wearing a chic winter coat after triumphantly exiting a bad Hollywood relationship. Dionne Warwick's voice and lyrics and the musical theme swell in the background. I was now minus the boyfriend and a home base. I couldn't possibly return east with my tail between my legs. I would miss so many things about Scott, his many generous gifts of costume jewelry and clothes, his frequent wit and charm, and the fact that he loved to drive in his Mitsubishi Eclipse and knew his way around town. I would never learn to love driving, but I would have to white knuckle it on my own. Rents had literally tripled overnight after the earthquake. I was cursing myself for having abandoned my minimalist Venice Beach bungalow that was surrounded by wonderful neighbors and had been affordable. How could I have moved in with such a pretentious brat? But he is not what this is about. This is about the man I did end up legally bound to. Through it all, my New York City pound rescue still comforted me. Suitably named Sancho, the character of Don Quixote's sidekick, his coat was turning from black to gray, and his gait had slowed down. Gray roots had begun sprouting on my own crown, and I began coloring them every 6 weeks. It was exactly 1 year post-breakup that I was poised to move back to New York City. After one of my periodic visits to friends and family, my plane landed back at LAX the very evening before all hell broke loose at the Twin Towers. Hysterical phone calls came in before dawn, signaling alarm about 9/11. One was my French-born next-door neighbor from the beachy bungalow. Her son was subletting my friend's apartment in Stuyvesant Town in Lower Manhattan, and she could not locate him. That same morning, the vet in Los Angeles informed me that my beloved cockapoo Sancho's heart was beginning to fail. I was devastated by both news hitting me all at once. The job climate in Los Angeles came to a standstill. It was even worse in New York City. People were leaving. Not an ideal time to return. I felt as if I was paused in midair. On that first Thanksgiving following the 9/11 attacks, everyone we knew was grounded. Rick, a man I had met through Scott, was an easygoing and kindly retired computer scientist. Rick had first been part of the ArtNet in the 1960s, the team that had invented the internet. And after that, Information Sciences Institute, a RAND think tank in Marina del Rey, had employed him for 30 plus years. Slightly addled from a head injury in his 20s, he lived by himself in his family's home, which was a comfortable 1950s ranch-style cottage in a quiet pocket near Century City in Westwood. He also had a sailboat docked in the marina. He clearly ignored the condition of the interior of his dwelling. It was a total train wreck. Despite the shabbiness and disrepair, the entourage leading up to the house was a lovely hill with a brick path, and the house was set back and shrouded with foliage. Large picture windows in the living room looked out onto the pool and backyard, which was serene, private, and peaceful. It had good bones, but the interior decor was a disaster. There were computers stationed in every room, covered with cobwebs. The kitchen was a storage place for yard tools, and the fridge and cupboards had long overdue expiration dates and food items. I smelled a foul odor from the carpets. Rick said there had been water damage. I discovered beautiful oak wooden floors underneath and spent a day or so on my hands and knees removing the carpets with an X-Acto knife. Then I hired a cleaning crew. Well, maybe a second one as well. I phoned up an appliance store and had them send over a guy to get the original Sears Kenmore oven in working order. Thus began a tradition of hosting a Thanksgiving feast amongst our mutual friends, even though I had not yet moved into Rick's home.
Very nice. Thank you so much. There's some nice comments in the chat. Anybody have something to say to Susie? All those things, historically speaking, I could really feel the AIDS epidemic, 9/11. Yeah, you know. Awesome. Yes, suspenseful ending spot. I agree with Martha. Leads into.
Yeah, that was, I'm just gonna add, that was really rich in detail of the setting and the places and the people and things. It really carried you right along.
Wonderful. Okay, anything else for Susie or anything else, Susie, you would like to say?
Yes, it's just it's so weird because this ended up being in something else. I grabbed it from something else, and I'm just thinking about it being the beginning of where I start my memoir. And there's a sad, terrible event that happens before it, but it's been suggested to me that I go into those things in flashbacks. So, you know, it's hard to grab something from something else and make it the starting point. And so I just didn't know if it pulls the reader in, because it's kind of like a long list of real estate and logistics.
Yeah, okay. Any comment for that on that? Does it pull you in? You can wire in the chat if you want. Did you feel like it pulled you in?
It does, but I'd like it to slow down just a little so that.
Yeah, I don't know if that was your reading or the pace of the story a little. Yeah, slowing it down, I would agree a little bit. New
Yorker can understand the real estate comments.
I know. And how 9/11 really hit us, and the AIDS epidemic, how that really, shaped our horizon. Okay, thank you. Next we're going to hear from Michael Shaika. And Michael describes himself as a sentient artist, expressing himself as a novelist dedicated to beauty and truths. That's like something only Michael could say. His experience in cottage industry, luxury fashion, has mastered the art of hand painting silk yardage. His writing subject matter consists of crafting as a lifestyle and mentally layered with deepening human themes. Okay. Michael is in the Mighty Writers, and he's also in the 100 Writing Days of Summer. And I am excited to hear his future, past, forward, backward fantasy. Okay, so I'm going to mute everybody. Michael, I'm going to mute you. You have to re-unmute yourself, okay?
I'm reading the opening scenes from my novel, Aber's Way, Earth Goddess of Starseed. And I would just like to show you the visual so you can see what I'm actually reading the very beginning. It's a little like star shape, like of a little kind of a setup poem. I know there's a real name for this type of thing, but it's like a little poem that's a setup for the whole, or anyways. Us, tending timelessness. Our past set free, virtually reimagined, of a multi-dimensional continuum, the remembrance of our future, co-created in the stillness of the present. Breathing, she rests. Innocently before all, the matriarch awakens within us. Harmonizing with nature through feeling, from a love so pure, fear is merely an illusion. Dissipated by heart-mind cohesion, this is the story of such an epic. Earth. Crawling towards light from within the depths of the tunnel, I approach the scent of sandalwood and oak moss. Hearing their voice, firm and petulant, I look up. Release it, let it go. Before me stands the vision of a goddess. Their hair gathered down the front of their forehead in the cascade of a wave. It frames one eye of lavender, staring me down. Drop it, Z commands. Their crossbow pointed between my eyes. Drop the rabbit, Lucos. Adjusting the arrow towards my upward movement, it remains aimed at my forehead. Dust sprays from their lips as Z yells. Drop it. Letting the rabbit fall from my jaws, I watch as it shakes softly beside my paws. Stomping their foot in rock dust, the goddess screams, "Be gone!" Such audacity, I think to myself. Stepping back into my shadow, I turn and slink into the depths of the tunnel, hungry and laughing. Such unimaginable resplendence. I conjure the memory. The red dress. A field of the universe unfolds before me. Flipped hair, violet eyes, poise, grace, flair, balance, indescribable presence. Humoring myself, I consent to wade through nostalgia. My thoughts flip back. The warrior stance. A wideness in my paws contracts. Sunlit geranium dress, my feet grow heavy. Vetiver, patchouli, jasmine, sheer sensual overload, the drum roll within a silver breath. I review the memory as a curious riddle. Arc of a brow, set of a bow, rosewood arrow, the tip of the ivory toe. Warrior goddess of yon earth, eyes of lilac, singing me, oak moss, come forth. I am Khmer, the angelic essence of a lynx. Some call me Lincus, Lucos, or Pishu, along with many other names from many other origins. Shangtagaza is my ancestral name. For simplicity's sake, I go by my nickname, Khmer, as in come here. Arriving on Earth from an eternal place of otherworldly dimensions, I am honored to secure the passage and support the purpose of the particular soul, Abra. Here I share my story of this rainbow being. Sagamonian Interglacial, Chapter 1. Meditating at the edge of the lagoon, I sit up to observe and record my experience. Abra paddles herself forward, riding in the shell of a floating exoskeleton. Swish, a smooth wooden paddle dips into the surface of the dark stream. Propelling the shell boat steadily, Z ventures into the oxygen-heavy mists of daybreak. Golden-eyed ducks fly above, their wings beating, whistling over the voyageuse. A horizon awash in luminescent clouds, edges tinted vermilion, sagegrass fluctuates in the wind, sporting tips of pointed amber. Above Abra's water vessel, an osprey spirals. It orchestrates the unfolding of sky from across an expansive vista of wilderness. For a second, the osprey hovers. Fluttering its wings midair, it plummets straight down in the shape of an arrow. As it reaches the horizon line, its wings stretch fully outwards. Folding in tight, the wings contract as claws pivot out. Into the water, it submerges, directly in front of the maiden. Instantly, the osprey emerges holding a large pickerel in its talons. Gaining speed by spiraling its wingspan, the osprey slowly rises, wiping away water droplets sprayed on their face. Abra's lips parse as Z watches in awe. As it takes flight, it passes over the tops of massive spruce trees, gliding before hillsides of glowing maples that gesture their leaves at the base of a lavender mountain. Beyond the mountain melts a colossal white glacier. Sparkling in sunlight, it dominates the pristine landscape below. Aber's throat gasps to witness the spectacle playing out before Zer. Settling down into the hull of a giant razor clam boat, Z rests Zer paddle, thinking to herself, "This is a good sign. I am like the osprey." Watching from my corner of the lagoon, I ponder upon my arrival here. Into the reflection of the stream before me, I begin scrying, trying to remember what I will need to know. The memories come reeling back to me threefold. Traversing a great distance at a tremendous speed, I outpace myself to reach the Tribunal of Animals for a mandatory midnight meeting. I am late to arrive. When I approach the ruins of the stone orbicula, the council has already begun. Lit by the aurora borealis, the ancient open-air structure smells of Vergosa rosa and burning cedar. That's 7 minutes about.
Perfect. Thank you. That was so much poetry and so much just beauty. Really, really lovely. You have a lot of things in the chat. Anybody else have something to share with our friend Michael? Waiting room, we have somebody. Okay. Okay. Michael, thank you so much. There was so much poetry in that. And it definitely drew you in. Okay. Okay, so we're going to our next reader, who is our friend Dean Landsman. And Dean tells us that there was a story idea kicking around, saved on every computer storage medium since 1980. It was looked at sometimes as storage media change, remember zip drives, and had grown ever so little over the years. Just before the pandemic hit, he took a look at it and jumped in head first. What began as a short, little funny story has since morphed into a 3-generation historical novel. Working with Julia has given me focus on my writing and an expansive look at being a writer. So he started his career as a radio DJ, ended up owning radio station, building a broadcast consulting firm, and later worked in telecom and online development, digital strategy, personal data, and online identity management and security. So Dean's kind of been all over the block, but he definitely has an enormous work that he's been allowing to grow underneath his fingers on the keyboard. So let's hear from Dean. I'm going to mute all. Dean, I'm going to mute you right now, and you have to unmute yourself, just if that's not clear. Also, if you want to see in your upper right-hand corner, your view can change so that you see the speaker large. I meant to say that last time when our friend Michael was putting something up to the computer. You might have been able to see it if he wasn't a postage stamp. So you can change your view when you want to see the speaker large. Okay, I'm going to shut up and let Dean unmute himself and begin.
I like the idea of Michael becoming very famous and being a postage stamp. I just want to give a little bit of background. As you heard, it's a 3-generation novel. This is from the 3rd generation. The characters are in their mid-30s, and it takes place in 1978. I'll start. It began that they would often meet when Manny walked Clark Kent in the early evening. That time varied. It might be after or before Manny and Clark Kent had each had their dinner. If Clark Kent seemed antsy, Manny would first take him out for his walk. Be it before or after dinner, that woman from across the street, Lisi, is who he and Clark Kent would most often see on these walks. Lisi, short for Elise, she had told him. Serendipity, he wonders, happenstance. She would join them on their walks. If she was coming home from work out of the Clark Street subway station, she'd say she needed to drop off her stuff. She'd be right back out. They would walk over to Pineapple Street, where she rented an apartment in one of the classic Brooklyn Heights brownstones. Clark Kent would wait patiently, then wag his tail with glee when she returned. The thought that it was so much easier to have women as friends, not girlfriends, zipped through Manny's mind in a flash. He ignored it, interested more in learning about this thin, wiry woman with the ready smile. The walks with Lisi were Clark Kent's longest walks. Manny enjoyed conversation with Lisi. She was smart, witty, quick-witted, and in many ways, like Janet. Lisi could be a friend like Janet. Manny knew to take it slow with that. Having a friend like Janet was unique, special. Could it be there really might be another Janet in his life? That would be great, he thought. One evening, Lisi was ill at ease. Manny took note as soon as he saw her walk out of the Clark Street subway station. She told him she had a horrible, stressful day at work. Manny asked if she would want to be left alone. Well, join them on their walk. I definitely want to join you, she said. It would be the best part of my day. Do you want to go to your apartment and change? Asked Manny. No, if I go inside, I'll get into my pajamas and feel sorry for myself. I'll mope until I fall asleep. Manny debated in his head. Should he ask her the next question? No, he thought. It sounds too much like a date. I don't want to go out on a date with her. This dog walking relationship is good enough. I like this. For now, keep it this way. Manny had no thoughts of taking Lisa to that Chinatown restaurant, the restaurant Janet loved to hate. She called it his first date restaurant. Janet said that was why none of his relationships lasted more than 2 or 3 months at the most. As soon as he suggested to go back to that dump, the girlfriends would break up with him. Bad first date choice, she always said. He did not perceive Lisi that way. Going there with her would not be a first date, not in his mind. He wouldn't want it to be that way in her mind. Yet her woeful mood made it seem like maybe, just maybe, it would be the right thing to do. Dinner, not Chinatown, that's out of the question. And it would mean a subway ride to get there. So it should be nearby. That's less like a date. Okay, he thought, go ahead and ask her. Lisi, we never talk much about food. You did tell me your grandmother's spaghetti sauce is to die for, like with every Italian-American grandmother born in Italy. But that's about it. Remember I told you that these evening walks with Clark Kent are always before or after dinner? Lisa gave Manny a look he couldn't quite interpret. Where are we going with this, Manny? Are you offering to cook dinner for me because I had a bad day? Tell me it's not your spaghetti sauce. Manny answered, no, not that. I don't make spaghetti sauce. I have to feed Clark Kent. He's never had spaghetti. He gets dog food. Usually he eats his dog food when I eat whatever I make for dinner. Lisa's mood was lifting. With a hint of glint in her eyes, she said, you're inviting me to your apartment to feed me dog food? Oh, no. My day has gone from very, very bad to much, much worse. Lisa chuckled after saying that. Manny got worried. Is she now inviting herself to my place? This can't be right. Have I sent those signals? After that split second of thought, Manny replied, no, Lisa, I was thinking you had a bad day. You said if you went to your apartment, you would just mope, feel sorry for yourself, then fall asleep. That sounds like a bad idea. I wondered if we should go get dinner somewhere on Montague Street. Lisa took a breath. She considered what Manny said. Manny wondered what was going through her head. You're right. I would go home and flop down into a self-pity stupor. I don't want to do that. Before we find a place on Montague Street, you have to feed Clark Kent. Can I come up with you while you feed him? Then we go to Montague Street? Manny agreed to that. Then he did a quick mental scan of his place. Uh-oh, he thought. Carl had been over the night before. The two of them had reverted into college mode. They smoked pot and listened to rock music. The pot pipe, rolling papers, an ounce bag, no longer an ounce worth, and an ashtray yet to be cleaned were all on the coffee table. The ounce bag was in a clear Tupperware container to keep it safe from Clark Kent. Oh, well, he thought, if she sees that and it blows their dog walking friendship, so be it. Yeah, sure, come up with Clark Kent and me while he chomps down his food and we can decide where to eat. Lisa said, better you decide. You lived here so much longer than I have. I don't know any of the Montague Street food places except for the pizzeria near the banks. Lisa saying, you decide, again gave Manny the shivers. That's what the cutesy flirts say. This is not good, he thought. He calmed down some when she offered why he should choose the place. Can I look around? Your building is so nice from the street. I've wondered what the apartments look like. Again, Manny got worried. This too was what girlfriends said, or wannabe girlfriends. Or was their not so subtle way of letting him know the two of them would be getting into his bedroom? Manny had a quick comeback. Give me a minute to put his food down. I'll give you a tour. Manny thought, glad I made the bed this morning. He began the tour, saving the living room for last. Lisa saw the pot and paraphernalia right away. Look at that, Manny the pothead. I never would have guessed. Manny hung his head and stayed quiet. Lisa said, are we going to smoke some before we go and eat? Food is better that way. We might order too much. Everything is on the menu, going to be so appealing. Manny was at a loss for words. Lisa said, no, wait, cancel that idea. I might go all introspective and more depressed. Good pot can do that sometimes. Forget it. Before that relief could sink in, she asked another question. This one shocked Manny. She said, do you have anything stronger? Speaking before thinking, Manny said, yeah, a little bit of Coke. He regretted saying it as soon as it came out of his mouth. Lisi's eyes widened. I love Coke. Manny, thinking quickly, said, not a good idea to do Coke before eating. Kills the appetite, numbs the taste buds. Lisi smiled and said, maybe we can do that another time. I'd like that. All these mixed signals, Manny thought. I'd like that. The ultimate subtle come on. Maybe because she had a bad day at work. Let it work itself out, he hoped. They walked back into the kitchen near the apartment door. Clark Kent had licked his bowl clean. He said, okay, let's go over to Montague Street and get something to eat. Clark Kent saw them to the door. He let out that doggy whimperish cry of his as they left. Lisi gave Manny a look of concern. Manny said, don't worry, he does that every time I leave. When I get back, he greets me like a long-lost favorite relative. Will he be that way for me? Lisi asked. Only if you're coming for my spaghetti sauce, Manny quipped. Proud though he was of his quick-witted response, again he thought, oh no, she's inviting herself back. I think that's 7 minutes. And this, by the way, is 5 pages of a 14-page chapter.
Very good. Wow, thank you. There's a lot of comments in the chat of things people really liked. Anybody have something they'd like to say to our friend Dean? Take me a minute. A lot of inner dialogue. I like the layers of thought and self-recrimination and this, that, and the other. Okay, Dean, anything you'd like to say before we move on? Thank you for sharing. That's a really, it really comes, really engages you.
Just the one thing is that as we led up to doing this, there were 2 or 3 other things I was going to read. But honestly, I couldn't read them without breaking up. And the last time we did this, I think 2 years ago, I was part of this. I started to break up at the end of what I was reading, and I thought, I don't want to do that again. So if I can control myself, maybe next time we do this, I'll read one of those.
Okay. Does anyone here feel like he should never break up or cry a little in something he's reading? I think it makes it feel more real and more interesting. Adam, you were saying something?
Oh, only something silly. I want to come visit your virtual background, Dean.
Well, if you know where my wife works, it's better to go there than me.
Okay. Our next reader is, let's see, Martha Rand. Martha Rand is reading the Broadway Tarot reading. So Martha began working with tarot and astrology in her early teens. She learned originally through her family, which combines Celtic, English, Eastern European, Jewish, and deep American roots. Her flash fiction has been anthologized, and she has written professional pieces for psychology and astrology publications. As a psychotherapist and coach, her work is both trauma-informed and healing-centered. So we're going to hear from Martha, the Broadway Tarot reading. There you are, Martha. I'm going to mute everybody, and you have to unmute yourself thereafter. Here we go. Let me get into speaker view.
Okay, are we ready? Okay, so the protagonist is a young woman named Eleni who's in her late 20s around her Saturn return, if that's meaningful to anybody here. And she's had a really rough week. A lot of crisis things have happened. And her husband, Jono, has taken her to the boardwalk, the Jersey Shore boardwalk, her and the 2 children. And they're relaxing after a day at the beach and the boardwalk. And she decides she sees a tarot reader's booth on the boardwalk and decides that she's going to get a tarot reading from another professional. As Eleni walked through the doorway, a little bell went off from under the doormat. Eleni stepped on it again to see where the sensor was. Hey, I'll be right there, someone called from the back. You only have to step on the doormat once. Take a seat. Red wooden wings were affixed to either side of the reader's large wicker chair. Atop the chair were painted silver letters that spelled out "Wise Woman." Jewelry hung to sparkle in the overhead lights. Cherubs' heads hung around the inside of the doorway. Eleni stepped closer to look at them and tried to avoid stepping again on the doormat. They were heads of baby dolls that had been spray painted with metallic spray in bronze, gold, and copper. On the table was a good-sized crystal. A short, square-shaped woman wearing a pale gray shift appeared. The woman's hair matched the color of the shift and waved wildly around her head. "I'm the wise woman. Who are you?" "Eleni. My name's Eleni." "So you're light, huh?" The woman questioned her in a deep voice that sounded like she had smoked all day. "Excuse me?" "Your name. It means light. Did you know that?" The woman stared at her over the top of her rimless glasses. Yeah, I knew that. What's your name?" "It's Cassie, short for Cassandra." "Well, that's a good name for a reader." Eleni was thinking about the mythological Cassandra who foretold the future when no one would listen. "Yeah, Eleni's a good name for a reader, too. Are you a reader?" "Yeah, I am." "I thought so. You're very psychic. Take a seat." She motioned to Eleni. "So what kind of a reading do you want?" Cassie lit up a cigarette and took a green glass ashtray from under the table. "I smoke when I read, okay?" It was a challenge, not a question. Eleni crossed her legs and leaned forward. "The $10 reading." "Okay, that's past, present, future. If you want more, then it costs more." "Just 3 cards?" Eleni questioned. "I'll do 5 cards," Cassie acceded. "Is that good with you?" "That's good. What cards do you use? A regular deck or something else?" "I use tarot. What do you think?" She pushed her rimless glasses up. Cassie reached under the table as she talked. "My tarot has the regular suits, hearts, clubs, spades, etc. You know, not many people use the regular deck. I think you lose a lot. There's no major arcana, you know. My deck has both suits and the picture cards. What sign are you?" "Pisces." "I knew that. Sometimes I don't know why I even ask." "How did you know?" Eleni asked. "Well, look at your eyes. They're the ocean, blue and green. And you're tall. I can see the martyr in you. Are you working in some social service field? Because you should. People need you." She shifted herself on the chair. "The downside is they're going to drain you. Get a job in that field so at least you get paid and you can go home in the evening. And your feet. You polish your toenails, you take good care of your feet. That's how I know you're a Pisces." "Any other questions, or can I do the reading now? It's a $10 reading. Let's get on with it." Cassie opened a purple satin bag and pulled out a deck wrapped in silk. It was old silk, so threadbare as to be almost transparent. "Okay, Queen of Hearts. That's you, honey. I bet you thought you'd be Queen of Cups for Pisces, water. Well, cups and hearts, it's the same thing. I'm giving you a lesson here. You know that?" Cassie pointed her finger at Eleni and seemed to freeze. Then just as suddenly she riffled through the cards. "You know, I always thought the Queen of Hearts should have red hair, not straw blonde, red, just like you. One day I'm going to do my own deck, make the Queen of Hearts with red hair like she should be. Okay, what's your question?" "I don't really have a question." Cassie let out a whistle of aggravation. "Do you want me to make one up?" Eleni offered. "Does that help you work?" "Don't worry about helping me work. See, there you go, Pisces, the martyr, being helpful, twisting yourself around to help others. I don't need help. If you don't have a question, you don't have a question. Don't make one up. That's no favor to me. Just be where you are. Didn't anybody ever tell you that? If nobody did, let me be the first. Just be where you are. Just be who you are. That's the best advice anybody could give you. And I'll do the reading anyway, but I'll tell you, honey, that's the advice you really need. Cassie laid out 2 cards to the right of the Queen of Hearts. That's the past. Queen of Diamonds, you've been lucky. You have the grace of God around you. Financially, you're always going to do well. But it's upside down. So you made a poor decision in the past. Well, don't we all? But you're young, you're not stuck, don't worry. Whoa, Ace of Cups reversed. You sad? Yeah, you've been sad about something. You lost something. Oh, well, it's gone. Let it go. Nothing you can do about it now. Any questions? Eleni knew exactly what she had lost. Well, what do you think I made a poor decision about? Eleni leaned forward to look at the cards. Honey, this is a $10 reading. If you want more information, you may have to pay more. Let me go on with the reading. Come on, we all make poor decisions sometimes. You must have made a poor decision sometime in the past. You're just human like the rest of us. Cassie paused for a moment to light another cigarette with the stub of her last cigarette. Okay, she continued, the present. She turned over the 8 of Hearts and placed it on top of the Queen of Hearts. Yeah, you're going through a change here. Hey, whatever you lost here in the Ace of Cups reversed, it's changing your life. You're not going back. Give it up. Move on. Cassie turned over 2 more cards. So do you just go back to school? She looked directly at Eleni. No. Of course not. That's the future. What am I talking about? You're going back to school. I am? 7 of Discs? What do you think it means? Cassie sounded like she was ready for an argument. Eleni agreed. If someone got 7s, it did often mean education. And okay, I'm wrapping up now. Knight of Clubs. Within this year, you're going to get something written on paper. A letter, a note, a card, something. It's from a man, a youngish man. He's on the dark side. I mean his coloring, not his character. It's going to change your life. Cassie leaned back. She was nodding her head as though she was agreeing to something between herself and the universe. Okay, that's it. You're still here? That's it. $10. That's your $10 reading. You want something else? Well, I still want to know what my poor decision was about. Ah, you're stuck on this, huh? What? You never made a poor decision? You know, that's so Virgo. That's your shadow side. Pisces shadow, getting stuck on details. Eleni fished in her bag. Here's the 10 for the reading. How's about $2 more and you turn over another card and see if it relates to my poor decision? Hey, you're paying for it. Oh, that's funny. Cassie rolled back in her chair and gave a big open-mouthed smile. She was laughing with her body. It jiggled and shook like watching a silent movie. You're paying for your bad decision because, like everybody, you make a bad decision, you pay for it. And now you're going to pay me another $2 to find out more about your bad decision. Put the money down. I'll turn over another card.
More.
That was fun. That was really fun. Okay, there's a lot of comments in the chat. Anybody have something to say to Martha? I liked it a lot. More was appropriate. I love the voice for Cassie. That was really lovely. The crassness, but she's not a con artist. She's just crass. I love that she really believes she's giving the material from the universe.
Yeah,
Anyway,
thank you.
anything you'd like to say?
I could listen to you all day. I could just listen to you all day, Martha.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
I
Yeah,
just- I
it's
just-
very exciting. It was very exciting.
Yeah, really fantastic. Absolutely. I was laughing.
Thank you.
Good, very nice. Okay.
Yeah, really, really great characters.
Mhm. Lovely. Anybody else? Or Martha, anything you want to say? Okay,
No, but thank you. I'm still working on it.
very nice. Many of us haven't heard much of what somebody else is writing day after day, so it's really eye-opening and gratifying to hear people's stories. Okay, we are moving to Heidi Hunter. And Heidi is an artist primarily and creative flow facilitator and a somatic instructor. And she has moved from paralyzing fear of the blank page, which I find hard to imagine, to writing a book called Resuscitate, Coming Back to Life Through Connected Play. And it will be an illustrated memoir, part playbook, celebrating the creative expression as a healing and transformative tool accessible to everyone. She began 100 Writing Days of Summer, committed to showing up each day, and she has, with a playful approach and enjoy writing with the community. I love challenging my creative chops and by incorporating Julia's daily prompts to my memoir. I hope to test the waters for my memoir writing in these public reading sessions. And today she's reading something called Scratches. So, Heidi, remember your job right now is to unmute yourself after I mute everybody. Hold.
All right. I never knew how to play. How can someone say that, then turn around and write a book about it? Hopefully, explanation will sprout from these pages, revealing how I finally come to frolic in a garden of mismatched socks and literally somersault out of bed each morning. My parents were charismatic photographers, but beneath the veneer of this distinguished profession lay a household rife with disconnection, where hiding the ugly was both a masterly and a dastardly art. I was well trained to smile. No matter what, my mouth stretched east-west, even when I felt north-south. I now understand that the sanctuary of inner play sheltered me from childhood trauma, a precious gift on my never-ending journey to self-wholeness. Play thrives in the garden of safety, curiosity, and confident belonging. Yet I was deprived of these roots during my formative years, finding solace only in solitude. At a year old, my pediatrician wrote the words thin, pale, anxious on my file. I started to get migraines and was on phenobarbital until I was 10, then prescribed stronger Fiorinol, which gave me wild hallucinations. Those medications were never once mentioned in any of my medical records. Unanswered questions dangle like loose threads, but they no longer unravel me. Those secrets are my parents' cross-hatched shadows. As a toddler, I sought refuge in repetition, music, and motion, a secret dance hidden deep within my being. Often it led to hypnotic rocking, sometimes even fierce headbanging, but mostly it remained a dissociative comfort. I'd lie on my back on the living room floor and trace patterns with my breath along the crown molding above, or float silently with the other dust specks entering and exiting a sunbeam. In those early years, a 6-foot mahogany babysitter named Zenith looked after me. At 3 years old, I was entrusted with that giant stereo console without needing an adult around. It was ingrained in me, the preciousness of those record albums. One careless scratch across those vinyl grooves, and this privilege would be taken away permanently. On a chair, on my tippy toes, I'd lean over and hold my breath. I'd slowly transfer the needle arm from its perch onto my index finger, like it was a delicate canary, and oh, so gently relocate it at the beginning of a special song. I knew which song was which by counting the thicknesses between spaces. This way I could play the same song over and over and over. I'd return to the floor now with soundtrack to my upside down world. The ceiling lamp would become Captain Hook's pirate ship sailing over the stippled plaster as Cyril Richard sang, "Who's the swiniest swine in the world?" Or the library where Henry Higgins taught My Fair Lady that Spanish rain fell mostly inside airplanes, which I never got. Eliza Doolittle and I learned to roll our R's together. On the other side of the living room wall, my mother would be in her workroom, retouching negatives. She was human Photoshop decades before digital. A behind-the-scenes Cupid, she made everyone fall in love with photographs of themselves. With a bare razor blade between her fingers, she'd etch into a negative with teeny tiny scratches, sculpting a jawline, removing reflections in eyeglasses, or coaxing a receding hairline back to youth. Cohort to the razor blade was a thin sable brush. Its tiny point would sip drops of diluted India ink from a porcelain palette. When applied to this backward world where black was white, ink strokes on a negative would whiten teeth, add a happy highlight to dull eyes, or even iron out an old lady's turkey neck. My mother spent hours collapsed into that light box, working her alchemy, turning negatives to precious positives. When she wasn't retouching, she was painting heirlooms. Once, a customer sheepishly returned a big family portrait. It was from a wedding, the only time their family was ever together. Soon after, the marriage had dissolved unhappily, so my mother replaced the ousted ex with a healthy split-leaf philodendron. On some wall somewhere, that family lives happily ever after, standing and smiling around a houseplant. I turn off the record player and walk into the workroom. A brand new 12-inch TV, a gift from my father, sits to the left of my mother. I see Lucy in black and white standing behind her couch and leaning forward between Fred and Ethel on either side. My mother is scratching and doesn't see me. She's retouching a negative of a little girl exactly like me, but opposite, with white curly hair and a black bow, dark skin, smiling through pitch black teeth, her eyes demon white holes. My mother swivels on her stool. Gigantic eyes stare at me through the thick black frames of magnifying glasses. "Oh, this one is a good one of you. I'm just hiding the circles under your eyes." She returns to work. Ricky Ricardo enters the apartment. He's screaming a conga drum roll of fast words I can't understand. Lucy starts sobbing, just like I do sometimes. "I'm sorry, Ricky." Oh, poor Lucy. I pick up a loose razor blade. Meticulously, I retouch a perfect star on Lucy's face with the point of the blade. I'm so proud of myself. It's a perfect clown nose. This will make her laugh for sure. Ricky opens his arms and Lucy runs to him, leaving the scratched star in the middle of this TV screen. Why didn't it stick to her face? It got left behind, just like Peter Pan's shadow. "What the?" My mom shrieks. "Look at what you've done." I start to vibrate inside. Next thing I know, I'm banging my head on the oval coffee table over and over and over. Then I vertically wrap myself in a curtain and disappear into the wall. I never needed to be punished. Any mistake would haunt me, and this was the first I can ever remember making. Slowly, we got used to watching TV through Lucy's clown nose. You can get used to anything after the initial shock. I recently stumbled upon a photograph of 8-year-old me, half smiling for the camera. The Kodak color had faded over the years, revealing dark ink brush strokes that erased my double chin and narrowed my chubby cheeks. She was hiding my ugly. I grew up wired to believe this was the way to succeed in life. At all costs, hide your ugly. I want to share how I did the opposite and learned to turn ugly to beautiful without a fairy godmother or photoshopping the truth. I invite you to join me in this dance of self-acceptance where we let go of the mask and embrace the raw, messy, and wondrous journey of being human.
Thank you. That was lovely. Gonna go to speaker view. Oh no. So there's a lot of things in the chat you won't want to miss. Anybody have something to say to our friend Heidi? Oh, yeah, that was really nice. Did you say you were 3 in the beginning of the story? It's amazing that you would have that memory so young. Or access to the stereo at that age. My God, I was struck down if I touched it at the age of 12. You had to be like, you'd have your driver's license to touch the stereo. Anyway,
Heidi,
so,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Heidi, I want to say that I found it was exciting for me too, because I found myself relating to your mother as an artist without the patience for kids.
Hmm. Okay. Don't miss the chat. If you guys want to share, Heidi's our last reader. If you want to keep the chat, you go into more on the lower right-hand corner, and that'll give you a chat. I think that'll, oh no, in a message, the more. Save chat. So I'll do that actually. Okay.
Julia, you're not reading?
You know what? We had 7 readers, so I didn't intend to, no. I wouldn't even know what's 7 minutes long if I picked up a random piece of something or other. But thank you. That's nice of you to think of me. Maybe next time. Anyway, yeah, because plus right now my book is segmented into 2 parts, so it's all one-sided right now. So anyway, okay. So is everybody, any thoughts or feelings before we go? Did everybody have a nice time listening and participating? Good. We love having you. Thank you so much for coming. It means so much to our readers. It really does, to have an audience for something you're working on. Okay, so I'm gonna be the last to leave just so I can capture some of the last of the chat. So anybody who'd like to, you can get off whenever you're ready. Thank you for coming. Okay. Okay.